We had a little chit-chat here with the speakers. And I will give them about a minute speaking time each to come back to their presentations for things they want to elaborate on, or perhaps they forgot it. And then secondly, we have some questions from the data guys, and perhaps we are going to vote on some things. And finally, I'm going to address what is perhaps the biggest challenge. We know what to do, but the question is how. Okay, let's start with Michael Ungerer. You have time to elaborate a little on your speech if you want, and if you want to stay in the chair, that's correct, fine with me. If you want to stand, also. There are no rules anymore.
Okay.
I'll leave it to you.
What are you going to do? You're going to sit down? Okay.
Sit down and relax.
Good. 1.5 minutes, you said? I only need a few seconds. The how is very simple. Just talk to each other. Get in a room, get all the stakeholders together, and hammer out a concept and a vision. I mean, there's enough examples around the world. Copenhagen, Cruise Baltic, prime example. Airport there, international connections, cruise port, whole cruising areas. One thing, of course, very important is it is not about one single port. Do not just think about your port. Think about the region, the destinations that you can reach. You need to think big picture. And again, and I'm repeating myself now, don't just think about your port's P&L. You need to get tourism authority involved, the Chamber of Commerce, the authorities, all stakeholders, all businesses that are profiting, and come up with a common strategy. Just talk to each other.
Well, that's a simple how, but difficult to implement, perhaps. Bo?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously I'm a little bit on the same track with the experience that I've had, and what I'll just refer to now is what we're seeing, because we need to develop more ports. We need to provide more interesting ports and interesting itineraries. So this is really a regional development. Of course, what's going on in Asia, what's going on in Australia is extremely important. Some of those, let's say, more developing, emerging markets. But the lack of infrastructure, the lack of, let's say, relevant, prepared destinations is really a serious problem. And something that's a challenge when 25 billion is already being invested in new ships. So again, it's the chicken and the egg situation. And I really hope that a lot of ports will look at this as a serious business opportunity, combined with container shipping, oil, and all the rest of it, and actually try to find a solution where you have multiple facilities that can be used for other purposes. I think that it was mentioned earlier, how can you reuse the facilities for other events and all the rest of it, so it's not just the cruise industry that has to pay for the facilities, but you can actually find, create business cases where it's actually used for trade shows and other venues in the winter time, for instance.
Okay.
Because it is a very seasonal business, we have to admit.
Thank you. Roberto, do you want to elaborate something on your presentation, or?
No, in fact, I would like to stress a bit more the fact that in the cruises, the cruise ships go where the customers ask to go. Because, of course, they're looking for new destinations. But the destinations need also to be, in some way, popular, already known from the people. We had some experience, for example, in Sardinia. We, as Cruise Terminal of Venice, we invested, as I said at the beginning, in other small ports. One of them was Cagliari in Sardinia. Very few people know about Cagliari, but it's a wonderful location with wonderful beaches around, with interesting UNESCO sites like the old megalithic stones of Barumini and so on. But of course, the cruise companies were telling us, yes, but listen, the customers, when we propose Sardinia, they ask for Olbia because it's known as Costa Smeralda. So Costa Smeralda is a brand worldwide because it means luxury, glamour, yachts, and this and that. In order to bring the ships to Cagliari, we also need a brand. So we've been working on the fact that a well-known Italian archaeologist and even a Californian archaeologist were publishing books about the fact that the area around Cagliari, for plenty of historical reasons, could have been Atlantis. And we've been working on the brand of Atlantis. So come to Sardinia, discover Atlantis, because we have the relics with the remains and this and that. Okay, so this made it a bit easier. Yep. But in any case, as I said before, you need to try to promote your port in terms of the attractions you have around it, and make these attractions viable. Yep. Because I mean, they have to be reachable in a
I'm coming again
very
towards you, sir. I'm coming again towards you. Your neighbor. Thank you for that, Douglas.
Okay, we're talking about ports maybe undeveloped. I think cruise passengers in general. And I'm always calling them cruise passengers because they actually pay for their holiday. If I have a guest in my house, they don't pay. I think...
They pay very little.
Yes, yeah.
You consider the value.
I think what's important... Yeah, what is important is that ports themselves should get together with other ports in the same region, because ports that have, say, a marquee name could get together with ports that actually don't have any name but have an attractive surrounding. So mix and match. Mixing major ports with minor ports is how the itinerary planners like to do things, because they want to have some major wow factors, and they like some relaxation days as well, days at sea, and days with very small ports. So there is room for everybody, but it's important, I think, for the ports themselves in a region to get together. Why don't you get 10 ports together and then offer the cruise line a whole package and say, look, this is where we can go in 7 days. This is where you can go in 10 days. We can give you this. We can support that. It's all about the cooperation, and together with the government departments, because government is interested in its local people, and government also needs to talk to the cruise lines and the ports in order to say, well, if you want to do that, perhaps we can do this. It is, as Michael Ungerer said, it's all about cooperation. And we, as an industry, we are available to you. You can come and talk to us, and we can work together. That's the whole thing. We have to work together.
For this chapter.
Okay. Busan has a very initial stage of the cruise business. So in this event, we get many good lessons from your good experience. And today I had a very good lesson that we have to check until the final stage of this business, whether there is a trash bucket behind the performance, or whether the script is mixed up or not until the next stage. We get questions, and we would apply to your good pieces of advice to Busan's cruise industry, and will be heart of Northeast Asian cruise business port. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, well. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you, gentlemen, for this first chapter. We have 2 to go. We have the questions of the data guys. Ulrich.
Yes, we've got some more questions left from the panels, and I got it for you. How important is sustainability to the industry, and the future sites of cruise vessels? Are they getting even bigger and bigger? You mentioned it already, but the audience wanted to know. Yeah.
So the first question is, how important is sustainability in the industry? Sorry for that. And the second one is future sizes of cruise vessels even bigger.
If I may.
Roberto?
Of course.
Which question
sustainability
first?
means also cost effectivity.
Of course.
So, I mean, delivering a product to the customer which is cost effective is an advantage for everybody. But as we experienced in Venice, when the presence of the ships becomes hopefully massive, You also have the problem of emissions, which is not a big problem because, I mean, the emissions are the same as you get from the car traffic or whatever. But some people can become sensitive. And I think that the industry made gigantic efforts. The fact that the scrubbers are arriving on board of the ships in order to annihilate the emissions when they are inside the port, so close to the city, that's a big achievement. Also what AIDA has made, we've been dealing also with Becker Marine System, exploring the same system of a barge serving the cruise ships, providing shore electricity when they are in the port. All these efforts have a big value, and I think the industry is really on the right path.
Okay, thank you for them. And a short one on the even bigger vessels.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
I mean,
you want to
just a quick comment. I mean, we've seen the Oasis class ships, and of course, everyone is talking about them. The fact is that there's 2 of them. So I mean, they're taking up a lot of attention when you consider the fact that there's only 2. So what you really should be looking at is, and we know what ships are being built and what size they have if we look ahead for the next 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
So it's actually relatively simple. What's more important is to look at it from a regional perspective and say, what can we as a region attract? What's realistic? Are we going to get a small ship from Saga Cruises if you're up in Scotland? Is tendering even an option?
Yeah.
Is it not realistic?
Yeah.
Or are we in the middle of the Mediterranean competing or in combined competition with Venice or Bari or Istanbul and getting the business? So there's not one answer to the question, but it's available out there what's going on and what's being developed. So it's really not that complicated to be honest.
That's an interesting remark. In the presentations, you mentioned it before. You said we know the problems from our point of view that we meet in harbors. So the problems are clear for us. It's easier for harbors to learn from each other. Is that happening? Are you providing harbors with that learning information?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah? How do you do that?
There's a very strong exchange inside the harbors associations. And of course, there's an exchange between the cruise companies and the harbors through CLIA. So there's an intensive, let's say, discussion in order to avoid mistakes of the past. We really have seen around the Mediterranean also wonderful terminal buildings built without a real purpose because, I mean, if you have a transient port, it's not really worth to build an expensive, let's say, terminal. But at the same time, this terminal could have been successfully used as a building, but it was built on a 200 meters long quay with only 7 meters depth. So without considering the trend of the ships, okay? So this is public wasted money. Of course, it is also important the fact that we are in the middle of a great trend, which is the privatization of the ports and the cruise port facilities, which means that when you privatize and you make a tender in order to find a private entity or body or company taking the port in concession and running it with a private mentality,
okay.
The private investor is much more careful in putting the money inside the port. So the market analysis is much more deeper.
Okay, thank you very much. Data guys, do we have perhaps a question for one of the gentlemen particularly? Not being Roberto, because he has his speaking time already, I think. Yeah.
Max, just one thing.
Sorry, I'm getting interrupted by Mr. Ward. Sorry, we are interrupted by Mr. Ward.
Sorry, just one thing. The second part of the question was about the size of cruise ships.
Yeah.
And as Bo said, we have 2 Oasis class ships. And for those who don't know what Oasis is, it's a ship that measures about 225,000 tons, carries 5,400 passengers, and if all the beds are filled, it will carry about 6,387 passengers. Now, those are 2 big ships, and there's a third one on order. However, as an industry in general, we all seem to agree that we don't think that cruise ships will get any larger, simply because we don't have the facilities in the ports and the infrastructure to handle them. So to answer that question, we don't think so. In fact, recently we've seen the introduction of a ship of ships of 250 passengers, and just recently Viking Star came with 930 passengers. So we're not always building big ships. We are building many, many ships for different types of audiences and markets.
Thank you.
Sorry for interrupting.
There's always a boss. We're gonna run out of time. We are 5 minutes late, but I wanted to ask one of you for one last statement to the audience, and then we go to our coffee break. Who can I give the last word? Mr. Ungerer?
The most important.
Famous final words is we're all in this together.
We're all in this together. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention, and a big hand for those guys.